Good afternoon, Member Lecker. Lizette, good afternoon.
Exactly.
Oh, it's Member Lecker. I acknowledge you. I salute you, Member. Did it work, Member? Did it work? Okay, that's good then. Good afternoon, honorable members, and also Speaker, Deputy Speaker, Secretary, and officials of Western Cape Provincial Parliament. My name is Matlodi Maseko, and I'm the Standing Committee, I'm the POC, Standing Committee Chair. For the record, I'm going to ask the members to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and Senior Management Team. My name is Wendy Kaiser-Philander, and I'm a member of this committee. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to everyone, and especially to Member Maseko and Mr. Davids. My name is Pat Lecker.
Hi, Chairperson. My name is Khalid Sayed. I'm a member of the committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gillian Bosman. I'm a member of the committee.
Thank you very much. As we know, I'm not alone. I am with Mr. Dustin Davids and also with our Senior Procedural Officer, Lizette Clinton. I'm going to hand over to introduce yourself, Speaker and Deputy Speaker, and then from there we can do the introduction to know each other for the record.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, members and colleagues. I'm Dalen Mitchell.
Chair, Beverly Schaefer.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, honourable members and colleagues. Romeo Adams, Secretary to the Provincial Parliament.
Afternoon, Chairperson and members and colleagues. Margot Goldstone, Director Strategy.
Good afternoon, Chair. Nicole Peterson, CFO.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Daho Jawdi, Manager Finance.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, members and colleagues. Vernon Titus, Director, Institutional Enablement.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, members and colleagues. Sunil Fouchier, Public Engagement.
Good afternoon, members and colleagues. My name is Lubabalo Stemele, Director, Parliamentary Support Services.
Afternoon, Chairperson, members, colleagues. My name is Zuki Sanduneni, Manager, Plenary Support Services.
Good afternoon, Andre Leroux, Senior Legal Advisor.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Ridwan Babu, Manager, Knowledge Management and Information Services.
Good afternoon, Lorica Elliott, Speaker's Office.
Good afternoon, members. Yanni Ace, Speaker's Office.
Good afternoon, Chair, members. Charles Doman, Sergeant at Arms.
Afternoon, Chairperson and members. My name is Mario Sassman, Manager, Committee Support. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members. My name is Usman Alexander, SNAM.
Kobe Skricker, Manager, ICT.
Good afternoon, Temba Kesa, Manager, PEO. Thank you.
James Retief, Stakeholder Management and Communication Services.
Good afternoon, Carolyn Prakasam, People Management.
Good afternoon, everyone. Zinzinigalo, Manager, Financial Compliance and Internal Control. Good afternoon, Genevieve Eckham, Manager in the Office of the Secretary.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, as we received the notice that the meeting today, the engagement will be in person, so that is in order. Number two, I'm going to request from you members, if you look at our agenda, we do have the point number 2 of the election of the chairperson. So there is an omission for that agenda point to be on the agenda today. So I'm going to ask if you can adopt the agenda with the omission of that election of the chairperson so that we can continue in that order. Member Philander.
Thank you very much, Chair. Considerate of what you have just conveyed to the meeting, I support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members?
I second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. With that being said, we are going to continue with the agenda of today, which is the deliberation of Vote 2, Western Cape Provincial Parliament, the schedule of the Western Cape Appropriation Bill for the 2023-2024 financial year. I'm going to make an assumption that you received the presentation. The WCPP have submitted the presentation, but before we get into that, any forward or overview from the speaker? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and once again, good afternoon, members. Chair, just a short overview or opening remarks from my side. As it's known, on the 12th of December, when I got elected as the Speaker of Parliament, we, as the executive management team of WCPP, looked at the core mandates of what Parliament is and what it should be, and I've adopted an approach of let's get back to basics for the remainder of this term and do the work of Parliament, with clear indications of 5 priorities: building a credible Western Cape Provincial Parliament, expanding citizen service, strengthening the core business of Parliament, strengthening the support being provided to legislators, i.e. members, and improving the morale of the employees that will ultimately build the foundation of deepening democracy for the citizens that we are elected to serve. So with these priorities, Chair, I trust that the budget that we will deliberate today and answer questions, as well as the annual performance plan as tabled as the executive authority in my name, gives effect to those key priorities and ultimately with the end in mind that how best we serve the citizens of the Western Cape. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any opening remarks from Secretary or Deputy?
Thank you, Chairperson. Nothing from my side further.
Thank you very much. Secretary, I don't know who's going to lead us with the presentation. You are allocated about 30 minutes to go through the presentation you sent to the members, and then from there we will engage.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Sorry, Secretary, member?
Chair, thank you. Just on a matter of procedure, I might not be familiar, but do we get to interact with the speaker's overview all in one after the Secretary has presented, or do we get to interact now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thought we are going to go through this presentation because we still have to go to the book. Then you can ask if there's questions on the overview. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mr. Jawuddin, the manager in the finance component responsible for the budget, will be taking us through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. With regards to the presentation, the speaker touched on what is basically the detail on slide 2 and 3, which is the WCPP's key priorities for the remainder of the term. So like I mentioned, the speaker did touch on that particular items on the slide 2 and 3, just to highlight specifically as to specific projects that link to those particular key priorities include under the first one, it would be the work skills plan implementation, cybersecurity strategy implementation. Under the second key priority, we have the digital online platform, the public engagement program throughout the province, as well as the oversight and accountability model, which basically links to the second priority. With regards to the third priority, we have the provision for capacity building initiatives. With regards to the fourth key priority, we have linked the upgrade of the chamber committee and auditorium to that, as well as continuity of the laptop refreshment for staff as per our internal asset policy, the implementation of the international relations plan for interparliamentary engagements. With regards to the fifth priority, as mentioned by the speaker, we have linked the providing employee wellness services to that particular key priority, as well as the implementation of study assistance program. And these are the main, if I can call it, key projects that link specifically to those key priorities, but not limited to those specifically. With regards to the budget itself, Chair, if I may just give a bit of background, during the preparation of the MTF budget, we had identified internally via our managers and the SMT where we would specifically need to, where funding is required for us to ensure we meet our specific mandate. And we had identified with the budget we did have, there was shortfalls in particular items where we had engagements with Provincial Treasury through the MTEC meetings. We had tabled a list of budget requests. I'm pleased to say that the majority, and 92% of what we had submitted to Provincial Treasury, we had received funding for. If I can maybe just touch very briefly on what that funding was received for. So we had a shortfall on COE due to the fact that our ICS, initial ICS provision for staff increases was less, and due to the fact that the new Treasury circular and allocation letter had a higher increase, we had a shortfall on that, for which Treasury had provided us the funding. There was a request to supplement corporate support to members regarding second dwelling and the policy provision therefore, and the shortfall on that we had requested and received that funding. Then with regards to our cybersecurity implementation plan, there was a request for additional funding for that, as well as the Office 365 upgrade linked to the cybersecurity implementation. That funding we have also received, and then further funding for our digital online platform, which is initiated in this financial year. However, a costing was received, and we identified early on that funding will be received over the MTF to fund that project. If I can maybe just touch on in the current financial year, we have a budget of 1.7 million. We had requested for the 2.4 and the 850 in the 2 years from Provincial Treasury, and we have received that funding. Just to summarize that specifically, the total additional funding we received from Provincial Treasury for the MTF period totals 11 million over the 3 years periods, which, like I mentioned previously, is a 92% of the requested funding that we had requested from Provincial Treasury. The tables that follow is a summary as per what's in the blue book, but just to touch on them, I won't belabor the slide specifically, Chair. I know these are exactly as per the blue book, but just to touch on the summary of payments and receipts. With regards to our budget for the 23-24 years, we have an allocation of 187,678,000, and that is a 0.2% increase of this current 22-23 year, but that's based on the revised estimate. Just to note that included in the revised estimate is an amount of 10.6 million of rollovers of the previous financial year, the 21-22 financial year, which was added to the revised estimate during adjustments estimate. So that results in a direct effect in why the percentage increase is not more than what it would have been, because of the fact that there was quite a few once-off projects funded from rollovers in the current financial year. And as per the footnotes, if I can just touch on those, in Program 1, there's a decrease of 1.7%, and it's mainly due to a rollover fund specifically regarding the laptop refresh that took place in this financial year. The cybersecurity and ERP addition specifically that came into our budget during adjustments estimate in the current financial year. If we had taken the percentage increase from our original budget, there would have been an increase, not a decrease, of 4.5% in that budget. And then just with regards to Program 2, we'll notice there's a decrease in 1.17%, and that's directly related to the fact that in the current financial year, also from rollovers, we supplemented the standing committee budget with 1.8 million, particularly in this financial year, and that resulted in the budget for standing committees going from about 1.025 million to 2.8 million in 23-24. And due to the fact that there was particular funding for foreign travel in this kind of financial year, which we had earmarked funding for that inflated the 22-23 year budget. And hence, that's the main reason for the decrease in Program 2. The next slide specifically gives that breakdown of what I mentioned now into economic classifications, just compensation in goods and services. So if I can maybe just highlight, as we can see in goods and services, the decrease in there is mainly due to, like I mentioned, the once-off expenditure as received and expended in the current financial year. With regards to Program 1, as we can see, there's that's the detail of the decrease in 1.7%. And like I said, the main reason for that is the funding expenditure that took place in this financial year. For example, the CPA secretariat function, as well as quite a few of the once-off projects within Program 1. The next three slides basically gives a detailed breakdown of slide number 7, and that's the per sub-program. And that provides a breakdown, as I said, per economic classification of each sub-program that makes up the program budget. With regards to Program 2, there I can specifically highlight what I mentioned earlier. We look at the sub-program 3, standing committees there, the budget had increased from 1.025 to 2.8, whereas the budget in this year is 2.6. But like I said, that was specifically due to the rollovers that was allocated in this current year adjustments estimate of 1.8 million. And like I said, specifically, if we take it out, there's quite a big increase from the original budget to the budget to 23-24, and also just to specifically highlight the budget for standing committees and committee support over the MTF. So for the standing committees, as per the table at the bottom, there's a 2.6, a 2.5, and a 2.6 million budget allocation for the MTF for standing committees, and for committee support, there's a budget of, and that's obviously that excludes compensation, so that's the operating budget specifically for committee support staff to standing committees, and that budget is 162, 111, and 113,000. And then once again, the next two slides basically just breaks that down further into the detail per economic classification per sub-program. With regards to Program 3, that's public engagement, and if I can maybe just touch on specific items that's if I can highlight in this particular sub-program is the implementation or the further implementation of the digital online platform, and that is housed in the public education outreach sub-program. And as mentioned previously, there's a 1.7 million budget in the current financial year, 2.4 million in 23-24, and 850,000 specifically in 24-25 budget. The table below basically gives a breakdown of the operational budget of the public and education outreach sub-program, excluding compensation of employees. And as you can see, the main reason for the decrease from 23-24 to 24-25 is the fact that we have that 2.4 million allocation for the digital online platform in 23-24. Once again, the next slide breaks that down into specific sub-programs as per Program 3. Program 4, there specifically is the member support sub-program, and that's regarding the members enabling allowances. In this current financial year, we made specific provision for members to partake in official visits within WCPP, and obviously political party support, which is a secretarial and constituency allowances, have been included in there. Just to note on that specifically, with regards to constituency allowances, we do add a inflationary increase to our constituency allowance budget. However, at this point in time, we don't have the budgeted figure as per national parliament. Once we do receive that amount from national parliament, we adjust our budgeted figure to be in line with national parliament specifically, so that our allowance for secretarial allowance per member is exactly as per national parliament. Chair, and that's just very short with the presentation on the budget, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, that is the story of WCPP and the stand by it. I'm going to now open up for the questions and start with from page 55. Let's take page 55, 56, 57, 58, 59. From 55 to 59. And I'm going to open up for the questions. Member Said, I recognize you.
Chair, thank you very much. I'm not going to go into the pages for now. For now, my initial is just on the input from the speaker. I think I want to welcome the speaker's input, and particularly the commitment for us to get back to basics. And I would think that then sets the tone for committee support, because committee support is one of the major basic elements there, and I'm sure later others will go into that. I just wanted to also highlight, and I know it's quite topical. I asked so because we've received questions, and it's out in the public domain, that the legislature, Western Cape Provincial Legislature, hosted a health and wellness program where there was a speaker who was a known international anti-vaxxer, And the Premier came out, obviously not in support of this. I just wanted to get a sense as to if we could just get some more details about what's the genesis of such a program, why such a program, and what are the lessons learned? Because I think it doesn't, not to say, look, I want to put on record that the legislature must not always be seen as towing the line of the executive. I understand that. But the program adopted by the executive around vaccinations and that vaccinations are the way to go was adopted here as well by the legislature. There was quite a public program and public awareness around it where we as members were asked to get jabbed and the type. We don't want to go into those debates, but I just wanted to get a sense as to right now, does it not send a signal that we are not on the same page in terms of the messaging, particularly given that there is an outbreak of COVID again, there's a resurgence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, it will be up to the Speaker or Deputy Speaker to respond to that. I'm not going to block the response, but I will appreciate if maybe we could have started with the agenda as we adopted it just before we started the meeting. And then after, if there's any other thing that we attend to that. Now, if we are going to start vice versa, it makes my life a little bit difficult. So through your indulgence, so that question, I think the Speaker and Deputy Speaker, they've got it. And then I don't think they're going anywhere. Let's start with the budget. And then when we are done, if there's any other questions, we will attend to those questions. Then it doesn't derail our agenda as much as I appreciate that the concern that you have for that response. So let's stick to that way, and then we will continue. Member Lecker?
Enkosi sihlalo wenhlanganiso. Maniqale ngelithi ndiyabulela kwingxelo esiyifumeneyo. Futhi kunjalo nje kule ngxelo siyifumeneyo ndicinga into yoba kubalulekile sithethe kwimiba engunqontsonqa ngale ntlangano esikuyo edibene nendlela ipalamente yaseNtshona Koloni eqhuba ngayo. Futhi okubalulekileyo kuthi kokokuba owona nobangela osidibanisayo kule komiti umalunga nendlela le komiti esebenza ngayo, imisebenzi yawo, kwakunye nendlela enokuthi kuqinisekiswe ngayo ukuba izixhobo zokusebenza kwekomiti ezikhoyo kule palamente yeNtshona Koloni zanele. Futhi zanele nje zikumgangatho ongazukhwinisa. Ndisitsho nje ndifuna ke ngoku ndamkele isiqinisekiso sokokuba le palamente kwakunye nohlahlo lwabiwo mali yalo siza kuthi kwesi standing committee sethu siqinisekise ukwenza imisebenzi efanelekileyo. Now, you would see that the ANC welcomes this commitment, and it means, therefore, if it is not matched with the budget, we will, as we will later see, that the standing committee budget has been cut by more than 7%. Yet the financial management's budget in program 1 has increased by 6%, and that is in page 58 of the Blue Book. Now, the leadership of WCPP, while it is committed in ensuring that we are enhanced and that the committees are prioritized. I want to understand with these budget cuts and increase in some other programs that may not necessarily add value to enhancing and strengthening the prioritizing of resources of committee work. Is the leadership of WCPP committed in ensuring committees which must give oversight and hold the executive to account? Is there such a commitment? Because if you cut a budget by 7% of the standing committee and yet you increase somewhere else by 1%, is there a commitment to that regard? Can you get some comments around that, Chair? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member, any question from those questions?
Chair, I just want to check sort of the column on procurement, page 59. I just wanted to ask, in my experience, the cost that the WCPP pays for procuring through service providers significantly increases what we spend. So for instance, if a cluster visit takes place, a bus needs to be procured. If you go directly to the bus companies or to the airlines, you get a specific price. But as soon as you go through the travel agents, those costs increase. I wanted to ask, is there a conversation about looking at developing a direct procurement relationship or perhaps signing a service level agreement where that can happen? And the same applies for the procurement of advertisements as well, because we've noticed that those prices just increase. And then I wanted to perhaps also on page 59, if the department can speak a bit more about the sort of the major planned procurement processes for the WCPP, the one around improving the IT systems, and then also the new digital oversight model for public engagement. And then I wanted to ask whether costing has been factored in for change management around the implementation of IT upgrades, because we've all experienced IT upgrades here where no communication is given to the organization in terms of any delays. So I just wanted to find out whether that's going to be factored in, because we do have a very sort of capable IT team that's quite small, and they produce quite a lot for such a small team. So I wanted to just check whether that has been factored into the costing there as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just add to that? Perhaps if the speaker or officials can add in terms of cybersecurity, the needs analysis to that, and the planned implementation, what system on that? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Maybe if I can add the first one from the presentation on page 2, there is number 1, building a credible WCPP. And the first bullet is the workplace skills plan implementation. I just want to maybe the clarity of what skills plan implementation is that, and if it's the skill to our officials by formal or informal, and if it's formal, how do you have maybe a policy to retain that skills? Looking at maybe from other departments or the parliament, that you will find that there is a investment of the skills, and immediately when official qualifies, then they move, or the private sector will come and take them away before they can even also empower the others that are going to remain behind in the institution. So what value, if that's the case that you are doing the formal, what value is it that you are making sure that it's going to add value to you, or otherwise you will be fetching water with washing basket of skilling, and then you don't have a policy that can empower you to really sustain that skills for a certain period, not really shortchanging the system that a person have to grow. There's growth, and then they do work to earn more. If you are paying lesser because you don't have enough funds to can pay those salaries, but still, there need to be a policy maybe that can empower you to make sure you sustain that skill, or you keep that skill for a certain period within the organization. Over to you, Secretary, or Minister, you want to respond first? Okay.
Thank you very
Oh,
much.
sorry, Speaker.
Yeah, it's a separation of powers, and that's the importance of Parliament. Firstly, let me. I'm going to allow the CFO and the Secretary to deal with the details. But I want to just comment on the point made by Honourable Lackham. I want to, on record, say that as part of the strategic priorities for the next or for the remainder of the term, it's when I say we must go back to basics, I've become obsessed with it, and the administration knows. So lawmaking, oversight of the executive, and public participation, which obviously includes the standing committees, and I know that you mentioned standing committees as an example. Now, when you look at if you compare the appropriated budget from one year to the next, the baseline from the main appropriation, it's nearly 1.6 million rand more, and the baseline for this financial year on 2.66 million rand is what we start off for committees. But I want to also make the point that committees or standing committees is a mere part of the allocation or the commitment of this Parliament to standing committees. And if you look at committee support in general, the amount of budget allocated for committees in order to perform their function. And then you can take it a little bit further and you can include plenary support, because holistically, all, for a lack of a better word, departments fulfill those three constitutional mandates. But I want to, on record, again commit that standing committees and the work of Parliament is crucial, especially in a year before an end of a term. We are well aware, and I think everyone has been, we're fortunate that most of us have gone, this is more than our first term or second term. So we also know out of history that amount of legislation that comes through at this time of a term, that the amount of work added to committees has also been taken into account. So that's on that. I know that there was questions around the procurement and and the workforce plan, and I think the administration can respond to those. But yes, again, the commitment is there, and I'm not going to backtrack on it. And I think in all our engagements with the administration, it's been categorically clear that the commitment and the work of Parliament is paramount in order to ensure that we deliver on our mandate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, before I designate the individual SMT members for the other questions, Speaker, with your indulgence, if I can just supplement the answer a bit. If we look at page 60 of the Blue Book, Chairperson, what we are actually doing, and the Speaker had indicated it's about the appropriated funds. What we are doing is we are looking at the total of 187,678,000 as the appropriated funds compared to the main appropriation for 2022-2023, the current financial year. So the amounts to be compared is then 187,678 with 176,502. Because in the adjustment estimates, we had then accommodated the retained funding, the rollover funds, and then was able to supplement. That process is still going to come because we at this stage don't know what pot would be available. If we then go straight with that same thinking to page 67 of the Blue Book, Chairperson, where we look at committees specifically, and let's just look at standing committees with the same principle in mind. From the main appropriation, what we are proposing to be allocated to committees is 2,662,000. We all have a moment, as opposed to 1,025, Chairperson, because again, the adjustment estimate amount of 2872 had taken into account the retained funding. That is a process that will still come going forward, because that only happens at the start of the next financial year, where we see what are the amounts that we have available for rollover. So it's just the easy response would be, if we compare main appropriation with main appropriation, there's actually an increase from 1025 to 2662. Chairperson, the question then, so our commitment to back to basics, as the speaker had said, is starting at the main appropriation level, and it will pull through when we get to other processes in the next financial year. I'm going to ask maybe the CFO just to respond. I think Honourable Bosman had asked a question on the procurement. As a government institution, procurement has to be open, transparent and competitive, and there's processes that works its way to the openness, transparency and competitiveness. If we go through a process where a service or a request for a service needs 3 quotations, we put it out there in terms of the service that is required, in terms of the specifications. When the quotations come, we have no influence over what the market dictates, what the price would be. The same would hold for if it is a tender process, where we then go through a lengthier process in terms of that specifically. But I'm going to ask the CFO if she would want to augment in terms of that. And then Mr. Titus will attend to the question of the implementation of the workplace skills plan, and then also the cyber security, the needs and the implementation strategy. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just in respect of the procurement and specifically on travel, currently we are sourcing 3 quotes and
just saying it's the volume is down. Is there a way of increasing the volume on the mics? I can't hear.
Just getting ICT on the country.
Okay, member side.
Chair, I think it could be an issue today, because I experienced the same thing in the ad hoc committee on the Public Service Commissioner issue. So I think there could be an, I don't know if it's IT or what, but there is an issue today.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'll just try and speak a bit louder as well. Okay. Just in terms of the procurement, as I was saying, we do go with a 3-quote approach, and generally the cheapest quote is what we do. With travel specifically, in directly getting that, we do go with the use of travel agents, because we don't have dedicated personnel within WCPP to only source travel quotes. And then just also with after hours services and things like that, the travel agent is the better option for us. We currently don't have a enabling contract in place with a specific travel agent. We are looking into that going forward, just in terms of timing and efficiency of the process in terms of when we do want to travel. But if we do use a travel agent, obviously there is the premium that we pay to the travel agent, unless we are going to specific providers to get it. But we don't have sufficient staff to just focus solely on procuring travel, so we do opt to use a travel agent.
Thank you. Mr. Titus?
Thank you very much, Chair. Just from the outset, to also just say thank you to the member for recognizing, Member Bosman, for recognizing the work that IT is performing. It is indeed a small team. One of the aspects that Mr. Skricker will deal with now was the question around IT systems procurement, what we have budgeted for next year linked to the budget and linked to our activities. That both from a functional perspective and from the cybersecurity perspective, if Mr. Skricker will deal with that part. I think the other question was around the change management aspects pertaining to the implementation of especially systems changes, and if Mrs. Krikke will also just deal with some of that and whether that has been costed, because that was the question there. And then there was also the question around cybersecurity needs analysis, which was, I think, from the chair. For Kobe to deal with those questions. As far as the workplace skills plan is concerned, I think Ms. Prakasam will deal in detail with that. But also just to say the aim of a workplace skills plan is to look at current needs, so current needs pertaining to current work that needs to be performed based on performance, but also at future requirements of the organization. And we are dealing with training needs very differently. I think the question here was also whether it is formal or informal. We have a different approach. I think Ms. Prakasam will just speak to some of the formal ideas that we have. And then I think Ms. Prakasam could also just refer to the approach that we have in ITDS pertaining to training. So our training is not only formalized training in the study assistance processes. There's other kind of training that is formalized, and then there are mentoring training issues, as well as an initiative that we started in our IT space for training. So perhaps if you'll indulge us in that way, please, ma'am.
Just to start on the cybersecurity needs analysis, what we did a gap analysis as to what the market indicated what most people are doing in terms of cybersecurity, and we gauged ourselves against that and what the gaps were. Once we identified that gaps, we realized that we cannot just implement this cybersecurity strategy blindly. We have to be guided by some framework, some standards, and we adopted in our cybersecurity strategy, we adopted what we call the NIST framework that looks at about 4 or 5 functions of protecting, and after you've protected all your entities within the organization, and when I say entities, I mean you as people, the devices we put onto the network itself. We need to protect those entities, and then we need to detect if there's any anomalies. In other words, have they been infiltrated? If we do detect infiltration, we then need to respond. So we need an adequate response, and then should our response not be adequate enough to mitigate what has happened, we then need to recover. So those are the 4 broad functions in which we had to make investments. So in the protect function, we had to make investments in terms of technology. The technology that we adopted was the Microsoft Office 365 E5, which is a security upgrade to our existing Office 365 subscription that we have with Microsoft. So a significant investment went into the procurement of this E5 upgrade. We then also realized that with this 5 NIST functions, it will impact 3 broad processes: people, process, and technology. We need to upskill internally our people. We need to activate new processes in terms of protecting you having all these technologies. And so it was those 3 domains of people, enabling the people, enabling new processes, and procuring the new technologies. With those governing principles, the NIST framework, the PPP, people, process, PPT, people, process, and technology, our investment went in those areas. And we've now started the implementation of the cybersecurity strategy, considering those 4 functions, and we've broken it down, and we've got a complete project plan that we're working to. In fact, we started our initiation of this strategy last week. We have a full plan, and it's going to be a phased approach in the way we now, and we're starting with your endpoint devices. And you will start noticing that visibly, you will see that we have now taken charge of this endpoint. We will have full control of this endpoint. And I just want to add that we will not infiltrate your personal information. We will still not we will still you will still be protected in terms of your personal information, but we will see all activity, anomalous activity on this device that you have without breaching any of your privacy. So that is how we approached the cybersecurity. On the matter of Office 365 and the change management and the investments we made on Office 365, we've developed multiple applications during this period that we are going to release to both members and staff. And when releasing those applications, because what Office 365 is, it's not about Word, Excel, and Teams. It is far beyond that. It is a development platform. It is a collaboration platform. It's a productivity stack of Microsoft that comes with quite a few bells and whistles. Now, while we are preparing our internal capability, we realized that cybersecurity had to take priority. We can't roll out all of this stuff, give it to everyone, and we are unable to protect it and to protect the users from themselves. So we waited with the change management. We have taken certain change nuggets and training to our staff to see how they respond to that training and the type of questions that has come out. But we have prepared, we are preparing to contact the members and to have information sessions with them on the pertinent issues, the important aspects of how they can enable themselves. In other words, the training we are planning after we've enabled cybersecurity is how do you use this technology in your role? Not just there's OneDrive, there's SharePoint, there's a voting app, there's that. We want to train you in context of the work that you're doing and harnessing that. I mean, we've been to committees and we tried this out with the committee section to show them how OneDrive, for example, can be used in context of their work. I trust, I'm not sure if I've answered all of it, but that was in a nutshell in terms of the change management, how we're utilizing the Office 365 stack, and then the cybersecurity needs analysis that was done and how we decided what we're going to implement in cybersecurity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Is that all the questions that have been asked? The skills retain policy, or what do you mean?
Thank you, Chair. In response to the question around the workplace skills plan, so the workplace skills plan. Closer and louder. Is that okay now? So in terms of the workplace skills plan, the workplace skills plan is informed by two parts. One part is the part that is driven by the needs analysis undertaken by people management in collaboration with the various line management. And then the other part relates to individual identification of needs by an employee. And this is funded through the study assistance program and is very much the formal aspect of it. The needs analysis, which is conducted by people management in collaboration with line management, identifies, as has been indicated earlier, what are the current needs and what are the future needs. The current needs really speak to what are the current skills required to ensure that the individual is able to perform optimally within their current role, but also what are, with that individual, some of the development pathways. And this is then both could be informal and it could be formal. One of the things that we've recognized and what we are doing differently is a recognition that, again, the world has changed, the world has shifted, and in particular, this is impacted on how people learn, when people want to learn. And so in response to that, and that is in terms of the ITDS example, we are ensuring that offerings that are made around training and development in initiatives take into account learner-paced, learner-based learning. So that in terms of the workplace skills plan is just a broad overview of how we approach it. I hope that answers the question adequately, Chair.
Okay, it partly covers me, but what I wanted to find out is maybe if we can start on page 59, maybe you'll get it. On page 59, under the service delivery risks. So it's all that, the diagnostic brief that you gave to us, and then I tend to believe in reacting to those risks identified, there is the skills development attached to that because diagnose the need. Now, I wanted to hear also, now, if you are going to react to the demand that comes from this service delivery risk, how are you going to retain that skill? Because this is a risk to you. So as you put the effort in trying to react to this risk, to correct that, how do you retain that it doesn't become repeat risk to you when we come for the next financial year, we see something that is different? And also adding to my question, the last sentence of the where you're saying this also requires a refocusing of our current public participation efforts in order to ensure we connect with the people of the Western Cape in a manner that deepens their understanding of Parliament, but also facilitates our engagement around realities facing the people. I'm interested to know, how are you going to do that, being the Parliament, because it's more of the branding of the Parliament for them to understand. So what effort have you put in that diagnostic brief that you have in front of us to make sure that also we can, when we come on the quarterly report, or we can say, okay, we have an understanding of what is it that you were trying to do, and then who's going to be responsible for that, and then how are you going to go about, just to indulge us in getting that information of what is your plan in trying to improve all this from the risks that you have identified.
Thank you, Chair. So in regards to the issue around the retention of skills, I think from a formal approach point of view, one of the things, first and foremost, is because we understand that this is an investment, whether it's in a formal course of study or an informal course of study, whatever it is, it does represent an investment, as you've indicated. And so part of of it is having a return on that investment. So all provision of learning and development includes a payback with service, and that's part of ensuring that for a reasonable period of time you can have that skills being transferred back into the organization, and that you are able to retain it to the extent reasonable, whilst ensuring that some of that may also be transferred onwards. So that is the specific point. On the issue around your second point, which is around the public engagement and branding, I think the Secretary will respond to that.
Chairperson, thank you, Chairperson. So the Chairperson, the question on the public engagement, I'm going to assume it's under the heading Service Delivery Risks. On page 59. So the paragraph specifically deals with quite well, more than one risk. The first risk that it attends to is the risk of cybersecurity that Mr. Kobe Skriker had attended to. It then towards the end, and this is where your question was, relates to the actual, I think it starts with a key challenge for the legislature is thus the enabling of the engagement with the members of the public. Ms. Fouchier will give us an indication in terms of how that risk will be mitigated. I think we have reported to the committee previously in terms of our quarterly reports that one of the interventions that we would like to start implementing, and we've gone a bit far in terms of the planning for the implementation, is to, because we more often than not are in the virtual hybrid space, we would like to increase the access to the WCPP by providing free access to virtual and or hybrid engagements of the WCPP in terms of the data provision through the WCPP website. Ms. Fushia will add one or two of the other matters that relates directly to the public engagement / community engagement sessions that will attend to the risk as it is indicated on that specific page. Thank you.
Before she comes in, I think the other time she did really, not long ago, she did indicate how it's going to go. But it was, my question is more about how are you going to facilitate the engagement around the realities facing the people? Because, I mean, it's a broad statement of you are going to take that responsibility. Maybe my understanding of that, let me make an example of, maybe you're saying that the realities is like your GBV, the baby is like, and then how are you going to go? And then what skill are you going to put in to attend? Because it's broad challenges that the communities are facing. And as a parliament, with a minimum budget that you do have, how are you going to go about to really make an impact that when the members, they come and say they do an oversight with what you said you identified as a risk for this parliament and you want to react to it, how are you going to go about? And the responsibility is going to be from which department, and then how are you going to go? That's where I'm trying to find out. I hope that it makes sense to you, Secretary.
So Chairperson, I'm going to ask for your indulgence to maybe just allow Ms. Forshire. Coincidentally, we had an engagement earlier this morning on what I think would speak to a response in terms of what you are referring to, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary. Thank you, Madam Chair. We are planning a series of targeted or focused stakeholder engagements throughout the rest of the financial year. We have an administrative guideline that is now with the Speaker's Office, where we propose a way, and it's been long in the making, through consultation with the procedural hub as well, how to process the recommendations that comes from these stakeholder engagements, because we don't want a situation where we have an engagement but nothing comes of it. You know, you don't want people to see you a year later and say, and now what? I spoke to you, we raised issues, and now what? So we have that. Hopefully we will have it in process, and we can start to, or in approved and have it in process soon. Thanks.
Speaker.
Okay, so Chairperson and honourable members, the thinking is the following. Our role as a WCPP from the administration is to enable, let's just look at public participation as one of the mandates of the WCPP. When we as the administration are involved in that public participation process, it is our duty to get it into the work of Parliament. Okay, it is how, and that is where the administrative guide and framework then comes in. It is how do we get it into the work of Parliament. You had used an example of one of the focus groups or focus areas being the let's say the circumstances that GBV finds itself in. If we go out there and we do a public participation process, it is extremely likely that the stakeholders who would be participating in that public participation process would make their input, would ask questions, would sometimes make suggestions on how certain circumstances are dealt with. As an institution, as the administration, it is then our duty to bring it back, and then through the processes of the WCPP, how does it then get into the processes of the WCPP? Because guess what? The next time we engage with that same group, the first thing they would want to know is, you spoke to us last year, we had given you a few suggestions, we had asked for feedback, what is the feedback now? So if we don't get that into the work of the WCPP, then we will not be in a position to provide that feedback. And I use the we very broadly, because the we could be the members of a specific committee that would need to be made aware of what had come out of that public engagement process. Even in the workshops, Chairperson, that Ms. Fushia's area facilitates. More often than not, the stakeholders who attend those workshops, even if it is just members of the WCPP administration, the staff members that are there, they still ask the questions and they expect a response. It is then our duty then to make sure that it gets into the processes of the WCPP. Thank you, Chairperson.
Chair, the Secretary covered what I wanted to say, but I think what is also important to highlight is that when these processes become the official business of the House, because that's the intention, that these recommendations actually becomes a decision of our House to be referred to various standing committees. It will then also provide an opportunity when we do reporting from a committee perspective, from the executive authority, the accounting officer, that we can actually account to the citizens that these were the recommendations as adopted. This is how it's been referred, and this is how it's been actioned. So that it's not just public outreach in the normal sense of it, although I always say we must go back to basics, but how do we enhance the current public education and outreach when we engage stakeholders and citizens in its entirety? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Leger.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think I have a few follow-ups, but maybe let me start on the first one, which talks to the actual decrease of the committee budget itself. I just want to get an understanding. There were figures that were reported here, one of 2.6 plus, and as compared to the first one, which was 1.25 million. Now, can perhaps we get maybe by way of written responses as to what is the actual breakdown of this budget that is said to have increased in the next financial year as opposed to the previous amount that was appropriated. Can we perhaps get some kind of expanded information in that regard? Then, to Chair, I want to get an understanding as far as public participation is concerned. What communication strategies are there to support public participation? Two, with that as well, do we have a stakeholders database in the institution, and where exactly is that database located? Because I'm trying to get an understanding as to how do we actually communicate our messages, particularly when it comes to our core businesses as far as public participation is concerned. Then, Chair, whilst we are at it also, there has been the use of the word going back, or phrase going back to basics. When we're talking of going back to basics, does that include the Tetanate project? If it doesn't, what exactly is it that we're talking about? Are we going to have a new project that is going to be initiated under the office of the new speaker? What exactly does that? Because for me, going back to basics is, for a lack of a better word, too pregnant. So can we get a simplistic reference to going back to basics? I've made an example of Tetanate as an example. So what is there in that phrase itself? So, Chair, I'm very much interested into that process, because for me it sounds nice to hear, but we don't know what it entails. And maybe the last one, Chair, we may have requested for it as part of our recommendations. that which relates to the organogram. What informs this organogram? Is there a study done? What exactly is it? Because I think we did speak about it in the last meeting that we had. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think the last meeting, that's why we were asking for the information. I think you still have to adopt the report so that it can be sent to WCPP for them to give us, because the way research that was done from 3 companies and they chose one, and what they took from that and what they left. So it's one document that we still have to receive. I need to take responsibility because we needed to have this meeting to adopt that report for me to sign it, to go and ask that information, but they can also respond to that. But another thing, adding to what you asked on the organogram, on the APP, there are the approved posts and there are some vacancies that are there. I just want to understand if we have those vacancies, as we speak now, who's taking responsibilities for what needs to be, because we have a very small staff component in WCPP that I tend to believe if one is not there, there is one way or another, the systems are not going to be in place, but I tend to be corrected on that one, because on your APP page 24, it tells another story of the vacancies, the semi-skilled, the skilled, technical, professionally qualified. Then when you go to page 33 of your APP, the worrisome is the inadequate procedural advice. That is there as one of the key risks. So if we can, and other risks, I'm not mentioning each and every one that you have identified on our behalf. So is there this posts that are not filled in one of the contribution to such a long list of the risk, or is just the risk that you have to put in, and then after it gives you the framework of what you have to react to, or you have to make sure that we have to champion our WCPP in service delivery, or in our really carrying our mandate to the way it's supposed to be. Thank you very much. Speaker?
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I'm going to attempt to answer, and where I can't, I'm sure the Secretary will pick up. Honourable Lacker, in her absence, I don't know if you want me to answer the questions. But the database, Chair, was one of the recommendations by the committee for that information. So, in fact, there is a database that resides under the Public Education and Outreach Department. So, to answer the question, there is a database that we engage stakeholders with. And then with regards to the back to basics approach, it's exactly that, back to basics. So we looked at what is the constitutional mandate of Parliament, and we are focusing on the constitutional mandate of Parliament. I want to, on record and categorically state, there will be no separate additional programs running in the Office of the Speaker contrary to the work of Parliament. And for that reason, I am comfortable repeating back to basics, because we are doing, maybe we should actually say back to basics in line with the constitutional mandate of why parliaments exist. So that is what we are going to do within that constitutional mandate. There's been 5 strategic priorities identified that will give effect to that, that will ultimately achieve the outcome of deepening democracy, for which parliaments in a constitutional democracy is built. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I think the Speaker had responded to the matter of the database. Also, I think you had responded, Speaker, with the assistance of the procedural officer with regards to documents that had been requested. And one of those documents was the report that had resulted in the post in the office of the Speaker from our last engagement was also one of those documents. So I trust those questions will be responded when the documents is provided, when it is in order. I'm just going to ask Mr. Titus to give an indication on what are the current vacancies, and I think we had an update earlier this week as a senior management team from Mr. Titus as the director responsible for people management, that all of the vacancies, if I'm not mistaken, that we currently have are currently in the recruitment process at various stages. There, for example, there's one person that will assume duty on the 1st of April. Well, the 3rd of April is the first working day. The 1st of April is on a Saturday. And then there's one person who's assuming duty on the 20th of March, which is this, I think it's this coming Monday. The person will assume duty. And then there's obviously other posts that are in different phases, but Mr. Titus will give an indication. Maybe just as a response to your question on risk, Chairperson. So the risk regime is implemented as follows. Institutions respond to the question, what could possibly go wrong? Then, as a next step in the regime is, what plans do you have in place to attend to what could possibly go wrong? The plans are referred to as mitigation strategies, mitigation plans. The list of risk in terms of key risk 2.6 in the APP, Chairperson, starting from page 32, is a response to the question, what could possibly go wrong? It is not us saying that this is a problem for us as an institution, because if you look at the column that deals with mitigation of risk, we are saying these are the strategies that are currently in place for us to ensure that what could possibly go wrong does not go wrong. Or if for some reason it does materialize, how do we minimize the actual effect of that risk? And that is how risk regimes work in institutions specifically. Ms. Margot Goldstone is the director responsible for that specific area. I'm just going to ask if she has something to supplement to the question of risk that you had before we give over to Mr. Titus. Thank you, Chairperson.
Chair, I think the Secretary's covered me, except maybe to just emphasize that, yes, it is the proactive planning to either minimize the impact of a risk should it materialize, or to prevent it from materializing at all. So it's more that proactive stance, I think, that we try to incorporate in our, now it's in as a key risk, so it's a strategic matter elevated, but we also pay lots of attention to it in our operational planning processes.
Just on that one. So what we see here every financial year is this, or you are progressive that it might change, or this is a standard of what you react to each and every financial year?
So Chairperson, our mitigation plans could be updated every single year. So let's say, for example, if we speak of the matter of inadequate skills, inadequate advice, procedural advice being provided. What we could be doing is we could, for example, digitize the digest of rulings or how committees deal with certain matters, so that it then becomes electronically, i.e. easier and speedily available to committees for the advice to be provided to them in terms of specific matters. We might, in a certain reporting period, have come across an, let's call it an anomaly, where something peculiar had happened that didn't happen previously, how we had attended to that, we would want to record it, and that then becomes the way the institution will deal. If a similar matter reoccurs in the future, this is how we will deal with it. That then becomes an improvement on the way and the type of advice we will then give in terms of procedural matters to the institution. So, when we get to a certain stage, Chairperson, there's the concept that the risk is manageable, the risk is managed. So when the risk is managed, what we are saying is that our mitigation plans is adequate enough for us to deal with the risk when the risk materializes or prevent the risk in its totality from materializing. Margot?
I think that's covered, Chair. I think also maybe just to indicate in terms of process, we develop these risks in the process of our overall strategic planning process. So we examine what are the factors in the external environment that are impacting on the business of Parliament. We look at some of the internal factors that are impacting on the business of Parliament. And from there, as a management team, together with the executive, we then decide on which are the critical risks that we need to be addressing. And so here you see on page 32 and 33, the strategic ones. We have a whole long gamut of operational risks, which we also track and which is devolved and which is managed at the operational level. So just to make that point that it's very much linked to our overall strategy and the key emerging issues in the environment and the extent to which we need to respond to that in order to be ready. So whilst we develop this on an annual basis, or we review it formally on an annual basis, we are on an ongoing basis, on a quarterly basis, also reflecting on whether the mitigations are adequate and what other emerging risks have come about. Thanks.
Chairperson, if it's then in order, I'm just going to ask Mr. Titus to respond to the question on the vacancies. There was also a question, Chairperson, that you had asked the communication strategies to support public participation. If after Mr. Titus, Ms. Fouchier can maybe also attend to that also for a response.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson and members, the vacancy rate as reflected here in the book is an 8% vacancy rate. Now, in a small organization such as ours, one person's vacancy could have a bigger impact because we are talking about a small organization and we don't have a lot of fat built into our COE and into the number of people that we have on our establishment. Generally speaking, a vacancy of 8% is not regarded as a crisis. We are at various stages with the filling of vacancies. I think the one thing that we have become accustomed to is that when it comes to staff, we've got a very flat structure within the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. So career pathing opportunities for people, sometimes we need to move out in order to move up. And I think this is what we are also realizing within the WCPP. So the vacancies that have been advertised and that are at different points of the recruitment process, because we try to be proactive where we can foresee that a vacancy is going to happen, especially when it comes to people who are now going to be retiring. So you members may have seen that apart from these, there are other adverts that had gone out in our general communication that's on our website. Around people who may be retiring, and we are advertising proactively those positions. So Mr. Adams already started speaking about some of the posts that will be filled soon. So ones that are currently within process and at interview stages already, we're talking of 3 senior officer positions, 2 in people management, and then there is 1 in the in senior strategy and oversight. We have at an advanced stage posts the clerk of the papers position with PSS as well as the office assistant position. Those 2 positions are at an advanced stage at this point. There's an IT cybersecurity position. It's a newly identified need within the organization that we've identified, knowing full well that this is the direction that we need to build capacity in. So there's the IT. And then you would also have seen, Chair, that there is a recruitment for a project officer to deal with technical project management within the organization across functions. So that is a short contract position that is being advertised for, and I've already spoken to some of the proactive posts. But we can keep the members informed on how we're progressing with our general recruitment, because our turnaround times for this are improving as we speak. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the communication on public participation and public participation opportunities, the Secretary did speak earlier about the stakeholder data, or the Speaker referred to the stakeholder database. So it's the stakeholder database for the organisation that resides at WCPP, at public engagement. We have an option of communicating to everyone. We have an option to communicate with people in a particular area, and also for people in a particular field of interest, because those information is all on the database, and because it is in an application, we can sort accordingly. So we can adjust our communication to fit what we are doing, where we are doing it, and who we are doing it for, which makes it a lot more effective. We also utilise, through our partnership agreement with the Department of Local Government, we also work a lot through the community development workers, people who are on the ground and who would know more about who the stakeholders are than what we would necessarily know from a distance. I wouldn't be able to tell you what happens in Merweville if you had to ask me now, but through our partnership with them, we actually garner great information. And sorry, Speaker, I really don't. We get great information and cooperation with getting the relevant people there. We also use our social media, both our website and our other social media platforms. And as has been communicated to the committee, we've started with social media advertising campaigns. We no longer do the print because we find that it doesn't work. And it is massively expensive. Similarly, we don't do the posters and the driving with the loudhailers. We prefer to do a more focused communication. So yeah, that is how we communicate the public participation opportunities.
Thank you very much, members. I know there's follow-ups now. I'm going to take guidance from you. A body break, or we continue? Okay. Then those follow-ups, I recognize you, Member Lekker and Member Bosman. We'll start there. Body break for how many minutes? 10 minutes. Okay. 10 minutes, that means it will be back past. Yeah. Thank you. past will be back. Thank you. of our deliberation of the vote too. And before we left, I recognized Honorable Lecker with the follow-ups and Honorable Boss. Okay, Honorable Bosman first, and after Honorable Lecker. Yes, he's still challenged, Member Lecker. I recognize that. Member Bosman.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I just want to follow up from the last conversation around the risks, and I wanted to check just on the APP page 32 and 33. I don't note the risk in terms of health and safety. If you remember, we did a walkabout, or no, I think there were other members of POC. None of the current members were there. I'm the only legacy member of POC from the previous term, but we did a walkabout of the health and safety of this building specifically, and we found serious deficiencies in terms of this building being a safe space to work from. So I wanted to ask whether that should be listed as a risk, and also specifically life-saving medical equipment that's not available in this building. So whether that is listed, should not be listed as a risk. And then also to ask whether there's been additional funds appropriated for improvements to the building. So my understanding is that the SLA with the Department of Public Works is around the maintenance of the building, but what about sort of specific improvements? Because during that walkabout, there were specific things identified there as well. And then, Chair, the previous question I asked with regards to the two big procurement items, the one was the ITC upgrade and the other one was a public participation, can't remember the name. It was a public participation platform. I just wanted to ask whether we can get some more details on what that public participation platform is going to be. And then also on the question, I appreciate the response around the training being provided to members in the change of technology. But my questions were specifically around the management of the change. So how do you identify when to put a change management plan in place from when you've started testing technology to when you're going to implementing it? Because a lot of that change management is around the communication. So if you're going to be doing a migration over the weekend, when do you let members know that there won't be access to certain systems on the weekend, etc., or by the Monday? We've had challenges with that in the past, and I think a lot of pressure is placed on the IT team to develop technology to roll out, but we need that buffer between sort of who do you speak to in terms of actually managing members' expectations of what's going to happen, and then also checking sort of whether everything was rolled out smoothly. Those are my follow-ups, Chair, and I'll keep my new questions for now.
Thank you. Member Leger.
No, thank you, Chair. Chair, my first follow-up is around the database. Where exactly do the database reside? Is it within PEO or is it within the communications sector? Then two, Chair, around the issue of, I think it's IT. You would have noticed that during the December holidays, come January, were unable to log into our WCPP emails. There would be consistent request that you must change your password, and with that you can only do that only when you come to the office and do that via your desktop and not through your gadgets. So I wanted to check as to what mitigation factors are there to attend to that. Then the last one, Chair, is around the accessibility. It's not part of this, but I think it's something that needs to be considered. The accessibility of the precinct itself to members after hours and over the weekends. You would recall that pre-COVID or during that hard lockdown, there was an email in circulation that said, due to the lockdown restrictions, members would have to come into the precinct via the entrance on 7 or on 15 way. And since then, there has not been any communication that we can use our access through the basement into the building. And I think many a times that hardcore criminals are appearing in the High Court. You would find policemen standing as far as the little walkie here on the back, and they restrict our access. If you want to have a conversation, you can't, because they are worried those hardcore criminals, there can be a gunfire exchange or something, and I think that is too risky for members. And I would want the administration to look into the access through the basement into the media room, because it's really not funny to go through that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think when they answer also your questions about the precincts, if we can get the clarity of the precincts of WCPP, when you say precincts, which flow up to where, that will help us, because there's been a very an argument of where and when do you say you are in precincts, when do you say you are not in the precincts of WCPP. Secretary?
Thank you, Chairperson. So Ms. Goldstone is going to respond to the question from Honourable Bosman on the health and safety risk specifically. Mr. Titus and more specifically Mr. Douman will respond to the issue of the precinct, the access, and what is considered to be the precinct of Parliament, and then also Honourable Lekker's question on the accessibility. Mr. Skriker will respond to the question that Honourable Lekker had raised about the inability to log in over the December-January period, and then Ms. Forshia will respond to the question on the database specifically that Honourable Lekker had asked. There was also a question for Mr. Skriker on the management of change, also from Honourable Bosman related to that. And then the question also for Ms. Forshia on more details related to public participation. I think we'll then have covered all except Mr. Titus will be responding to the question on whether additional funds for improvement of the building has been made available, considering the arrangement that the maintenance plan is what we had agreed to with Transport and Public Works. Thank you, Chairperson.
Chair, if I may, just for Member Bosman's question on the OHS and the extent to which it's been considered as a strategic risk, it is captured on page 33 under key risk number 7, where there's reference to the mitigations in terms of OHS. It's not very detailed here. There is quite a lot of detailed operational risks on our risk register, which perhaps Mr. Douman can speak to, which give, I think, a little bit more detail in terms of what are the actions, specific operational actions around OHS mitigation. Perhaps Mr. Douman or Mr. Titus. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's two parts. The one is about the risk assessment, and then the other one is specifically the precincts of Parliament. If I can maybe first cover the issue about the risk assessment of the building. In 2019, the Department of Community Safety undertook a comprehensive risk assessment of the building, not only this building, but all Western Cape government buildings. Subsequently, they've issued a HIRA report, which stands for the Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment. That report was also handed over to the Department of Transport and Public Works. So currently, we and Public Works know exactly where the risk areas are. That specific part has been taken up in the APP, and we are measuring now the compliance with in terms of that risk assessment. Just in terms of the access to the building, the member is correct. Prior to COVID-19, that access was available to members and staff. But we did ask Community Safety to do to conduct a formal risk assessment to that entrance and the other entrances as well into the building. Community Safety through the HOD have written back to us to indicate that that specific route is an emergency escape route. Meaning basically you can go down the escape route if there's an emergency, but it is not to be used as an entrance into the building. It also creates a potential security risk, so that we as the security needs to be aware at any given time who is in the building. If that route is used, it opens up the building to other security risk. Anybody then can come through that specific area. So they've advised that the main entrances of 7 and 15 is ideal and should be used. So we have discussed that also in our integrated safety and security forums with other security managers of the building, and it was accepted as such. So if I think we have requested again for a re-evaluation of that entrance to be open after the COVID-19 pandemic, and the response that we got was the same, that should not be used because it's an emergency escape route. As far as the precincts of Parliament, I think the precincts of Parliament, if I'm correct, Chapter 2 of the Powers and Privileges indicates clearly where the precincts of Parliament are. It mentions just in short the chamber, the areas adjacent to the chamber, and all the areas where we do our business of Parliament. But in terms of just drawing the precincts of Parliament, it is a bit challenged in this building for the fact that we share this building also with the executive. So I think a few years ago, we did a formal walkabout on the ground floor in particular, and basically outside the steps of 7 Wales Street, just to draw a clear diagram to indicate where the precincts of Parliament are. And in terms of that drawing, we had also a representative from Legal, Public Works, and the previous Secretary to Parliament. And then we submitted a report on that to Public Works, because in terms of our arrangement, we need to agree on the precincts of Parliament. So our building, I mean, it has been indicated on numerous occasions, are very unique because we share this building. But it is when the certificate, yes, so I just want to stop maybe there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I can just come in there on the questions that were asked by Honourable Bosman and Honourable Lecker. The first question asked by Honourable Bosman was with regards to the digital online platform, which is essentially an interactive app. It was discussed at length. I know you weren't in the previous POC meeting, but the app will enable citizens of the Western Cape to register on the app, providing a verification like an ID number that will be checked with the verified with the Department of Home Affairs, and by inputting the address, the residential address of the citizen, it will link the citizen to the constituency heads for that area, and that will enable citizen engagement with the elected public representatives in WCPP. It provides a lot of reporting functions where people can track, the member can respond and indicate to the citizen what they're going to do, if they're going to do anything, or provide informational clarity if they have any. Yeah, so it's got a lot of reporting functionalities and things like that as well. Whilst this is a phone-based, it's a smartphone-based app, I would suggest that members look at, there's a website called govchat.za, which is kind of the similar concept used by government, but that's just on a web platform, not a phone platform. So that's in terms of the digital online platform. I think, Honourable Bosman, I will be able to give you more information. Maybe I'll give it to you in document form because the other members have been through that. So in terms of the database, Honourable Lekker, it's an application like HR Manage or the self-service portal, if you want to call it that. It is hosted and administered by Public Education and Outreach. In other words, we are the project owner. ITDS has access to the system in a support, maintenance, security function. So they will be the people that manage the passwords, etc., etc. But every PEO employee has access to the stakeholder database. Every committee's employee has access to the stakeholder database. Everyone in stakeholder management and communication services should have access to the stakeholder database. So it isn't proprietary for public engagement, it's for the WCPP, but in order to maintain data integrity and security, it has to be the responsibility of one specific place. So if the committees, for instance, if there's a public hearing and the committees want to invite stakeholders to attend, the procedural officer, Dustin, will be able to access the stakeholder database and communicate with the stakeholders. It's both email and SMS communication with the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Said and Member Bosman.
Chair, thank you very much. Just to follow up on the issue of the stakeholder database. Now, what has been happening recently, I've seen quite a few members have also been inviting members of the public to attend some of these committees and that type of thing. And what happens is then those details obviously are taken down when they come, they have to sign that. Just wanted to get a sense, are those individuals also plugged into the database as well? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Bosman.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just want to get some clarity on the question Member Lekker asked around the access and the response we got. Previously, we were told that that was due to the National Key Point Act and an assessment that was done there. So I just wanted to ask which one is it? Is it the DOCS assessment? And then also if the issue is needing to know who's in the building, those doors, as far as I remember, are access controlled. And one of the other risks that I don't think anybody has picked up on is that when members have to walk up the ramp, and then Member Maseko comes with her gas guzzler that she can't see anybody in front of her, there's a bigger risk of a member being run down. And also the fact that the security gate itself doesn't actually work. It's not automated at the moment. So if you are leaving the office quite late, you spend about 30 minutes standing outside on Dorp Street in the evenings, waiting and looking for a security guard as well. So I think we might need to do another assessment to look at sort of the user experience as well, and especially after hours, how people sort of get in and out of the building. So if you work till 8 o'clock, you're spending sort of quite a bit of time standing at that Dorp Street entrance, because the gate at the moment needs to be opened manually. So it's only the booms that are working automatically.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dome.
Thank you, Member. Just in response, yes, the building is a national key point or critical infrastructure as is known, but it is the assessment that was done by the Department of Community Safety was a risk assessment of that specific entrance into the building. Members, if I may say, members do have 24/7 access. I think the challenge comes in when members do not notify us if they are in the building after hours or on weekends, because just in terms of SAP's arrangements, SAPs are supposed to do after-hour walkabouts in the building. So if they find somebody in the office and they're not aware that somebody came through the main entrance, that becomes problematic and it becomes an incident, and then it's reported. So the ideal is to have proper access control where people come through 7 or 15 well by prior notification, and I think that has worked well. And that is also to secure the building and the people that is in the building. I know it is quite frustrating, that ramp, because I think quite a few managers also use that ramp. We have written to Public Works to say that it is a risk, because even to increase the risk, it's a refuse recycle place. So we have written to Public Works and asked them to remove that refuse recycle place that is downstairs, but it is a design error. I think we had Public Works before previous rules committees to come and explain the design error. And so we are challenged in terms of that, members of Parliament. The nice one would be to open that exit again, but it will create a security risk. I think for years we have struggled just to get that under control. And I think now that we more or less have it, at least we have some security, some sense of security that we know who is in the building. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Titus and Mr. Doman. Member Lecker?
Chair, I wish I could accept the response about access to the legislature. There are cameras on each and every point. The police are monitoring the cameras through that office of theirs. At least I've been there, I've seen it. Now, our presence in the precinct, whether we used 7 or 15 whale or we used the underground area, it's immaterial because there are cameras there. They know who is inside and who is busy doing what in which floor. Now, Chair, I am not saying we must be treated in a special way. There are serious life risks. It's risky to walk outside the parking bay into the building, as I've already cited. In the evenings, there are other people that are living in the streets. There's one that normally sleeps outside the cafeteria here on Dorp Street. And if you take members of the executive, they drive through with their cars through that other side which is protected. Now I want to believe that ordinary members of the legislature are treated different from members of the executive, and that is unacceptable, Chair. It's unacceptable. I don't buy the story of, yes, the docs can do their security assessment. They can make such recommendations, but there should be a mitigating system towards our accessibility into the building. You don't just walk inside those 2 doors. You use this thing. You use your access card. Nobody else will access the building without having used this. And if there's no mechanism to detect who walks in using the access card, then that's something that should be looked into. I really don't buy the story. Thank you.
Speaker?
Thank you, Chair. Without belaboring the point, I completely take the point raised by Honourable Lecker and completely concur and agree that the safety of all members of Parliament, I mean, this is the seat of Parliament, should be protected, and the necessary security measures needs to be in place. So if I can ask, Chair, that's a recommendation, and that we will come back with after doing another assessment. And I mean, assessment is an assessment, and it's there to be debated. So I commit that we'll come back after engagement with the Department of Community Safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Any other questions, members?
Sorry, Madam Chair, there was a question from Member Syed about the events. We already do with every single public engagement program that we have. We also ask the committee people, for anyone that attend committees, that we feed that into the stakeholder database as well. We would definitely, if members would send us the list of stakeholders that attend like commemorative events, then we will input that into the stakeholder database as well. So we're trying to grow it constantly.
Okay. What I want to find out, that means the PO doesn't have the mechanism, or you do that also in identifying the stakeholders based on maybe sometimes looking at the legislation that is coming to the parliament, that you can identify stakeholders maybe that can be interested to be in the database, to sort of give them the heads up of what might be coming, so that by the time the legislation gets into the cycle or the process, already they know about that, or you wait for them or for their member or the procedural officers to give you the information to do that, Secretary?
Chairperson, just before Ms. Fouchier responds to your question, maybe if Ms. Fouchier can just give an indication on what are the sources for content for the database.
Thank you, Secretary. So Chairperson and members, when we when we started the stakeholder database and we started to gather information, that was before we even had the application. We consolidated it on Excel spreadsheet. Thank you. We looked at everything that was already in PEO, so all the stakeholders that over the years was built up in PEO. We liaised with every single committee coordinator to get all the stakeholders that they have had over the years. They've built up quite a library. We liaised with every department to say, give us the stakeholders that you already have. Then we do research, like I said earlier, even with through the community development workers, to obtain stakeholders in the communities. And with every event we have, we add it. So we try to branch broader and broader as we go along. With regards to your question, we have started a different way of preparing for legislation that comes to WCPP. So we no longer wait until the bill is referred to WCPP. The Public Education and Outreach team is linked, well, before it goes to NCOP, or the moment that it arrives at NCOP, we are notified of that already. And then we start to do preparatory work for the committee, so that by the time the legislation gets to WCPP, we can say to the relevant procedural officer, yeah, here's your list of stakeholders, here's a summary of the bill, a summary of the changes, whatever the case may be. And for provincial laws, we are also on the legal group for the province. So if there's draft legislation that they're busy with, we know it long before it is referred here, and we do that preparatory work before the time. Unfortunately, in the last few years, we haven't really had a lot of opportunity to put that into play. But we know for the coming period, there's a lot of legislation coming through, and we really hope that that would be able to make a big difference. So what we're essentially trying to do, we know that there's so much pressure on the committees to have enough public hearings and enough input in a very short period of time, because the turnover time is so tight. So we want to optimize that and give members at least an extra week or 2 weeks to do public engagement by the work that we do beforehand.
Okay, thank you very much. Members?
Chair, I need to respond to Member Lecker.
Member Lecker over there. Okay.
I'm responding to two questions, that of Member Lecker and Member Bosman. I'm going to start with the password issue. What we do during the December period or any long vacation period, we run a report of all staff whose passwords will expire. We do that in the IT back office, and I would generally ask the ICT team to contact those people to reset their password for the vacation period. I'm not sure what happened in your case, Member Lecker, but that is the proactive process that we have, because we can run that report that tells us in the next 10 days, 5 days, 20 days, as long as we want to draw it. So the way how we've mitigated this process, number one, you can contact Help Desk and we will be able to reset your password for you. We further now investigating a password reset self-help option, which is a plugin we load onto what we call our Active Directory in terms of technical speak. And we're also looking at the potential of doing it through Office 365, which has a self-service, meaning that you'll get an OTP, you'll get an SMS, it will ask you a question, and it will allow you to reset your password yourself. Those are the two mitigations we have, is Help Desk. If you do have an issue, we check who is going to expire, and we've got this other application we're investigating because we know how important a password reset is. You can go to the bank now and reset your password via self-help option. So we want to be also responsive like that and allow people to reset their passwords when they wish. Doesn't matter where they are, whether on this network or not. So that point is taken, and we will improve our technology in that sense. In terms of Member Bosman, who raised the issue of IT technical change management, we do have a formal technical change management policy in ICT that where we assess what is going to go, what we're trying to do, what is the impact to end users, how we're going to test it was successful, and internally measuring the impact and trying different options to see if we can mitigate the impact. We also notify internal communications to inform everyone that there's this big change happening. I agree with Member Bosman, mistakes was made during the Office 365 rollout, and this was supposed to be low-hanging fruit, and it was supposed to be a smooth migration. The oversight, or the lack of oversight, came in where we thought that Office would respond the same way for all the users. So the mailboxes migrated silently in the back end, for example, but unfortunately those with Office 2013 did not get a smooth switch over. The mistake that was made also is we targeted way too large a group because it was low-hanging fruit, and this could silently happen in the background. We didn't expect the Outlook client to behave so badly because we were given assurances that it should not happen. The way what we've learned from this process, and we always do apply a change management process, we may not have what we call a change board because we're too small to operate a change board. So the approvals is taken between myself and the senior officer, and we have formed the Director Institutional Enablement, and then from there we send out the communication via internal communications. What we've learned in terms of our change management, for instance, with the cybersecurity project plan and the phases that we're going to do is we're going to target this in groups of 10. We will inform those groups that you are now subject to the cybersecurity rollout, and hence we contain that and we can better support you. When 150 people all of a sudden something goes wrong, say with 30 people, we only 2 or 3 support staff and they can't get to everyone, and hence you feel the impact of that change. So by limiting it to smaller groups now, we have better control. And going forward, we will certainly do that in smaller groups and to then roll out change to the organization in a more controlled manner. But acknowledged, mistakes was made and we did impact the users. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, I'm going to take that you ask questions up to page 82. As you were just asking, randomly member said. Yeah. Member side.
Thank you, Chairperson. On page 67, on the Sergeant at Arms, I don't know if he's still here, yes, Mr. Tillman. There's a cut of 37% in that particular budget. Now, I just want to firstly, number one, and we've made a request. There was and one does really not want to make any politics of this, but we had a passing away of a member in the building. And we've been engaging with the administration on the matter, and that happened last year. And we're yet to receive a report on that, on the passing. I think it's important. We've raised it before. I don't know if we've raised it now since the new speaker has come, but there is a record that we've raised it with the administration. But we see that the sergeant at arms, whose duty is occupational health and safety, has his budget cut by 37%. Just wanted to know, should we have not have been rather allocating funds, more funds to his office to ensure that our responses to emergencies could be prevented and other cases as well. Then page 67, table 9.3, the summary of payments and estimates, program 3, public engagement. You see there's an increase of budget in nearly 7%. So the sergeant at arms budget is cut by 37%, but increase in public engagement budget by nearly 7%, of which 3 million will go into advertising. Now, in fact, we have yet to get, and I would say this, a reasonable explanation as to why the advertising budget jumped from less than R500,000 this time last year at the main appropriation to over 2 million 6 months later at the adjustment appropriation. Maybe we can get that response. But what justification is there for the increase to that particular budget, to the advertising and public engagement budget, especially given that public engagement program, and even if one gathers from the speaker's intro and the move that we must get back to basics, that the public engagement program in its current form, or as we have had, has not really borne fruit in the last 4 years. And we're hoping, obviously, we're encouraged by the speaker's new focus that it will bear fruit. But I just wanted to get a sense as to what's the justification for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And member, I think on the issue of the report, there was a report that was sent. I think they did resend back for, especially for the issue of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, because there was a question of is the members, the employees or the members, how are they classified? And the conclusion to that is saying that the members can therefore not be seen to fall within the reach and ambit of such a legislation that provides or expressly for employees. So in consequence, members by implication excluded from the provisions of Occupational Health and Safety Act. And that's why we requested that means the in-house committee, we have to have a structured, the Safety Act and Occupational Health that can also include the members, because the labor doesn't include members into that act as the employees. So we are not covered under that ambit. So we need to have something with the experience of what happened to member Botha. So the speaker, I think he will also include in your response to say so far what happened.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, when I say I take it seriously, I mean it, because I mean, if the law doesn't provide for members to be classified as employees, but I'm still responsible for members. So I'm not, I mean, the law is one thing, but the putting systems in place, and perhaps, Chair, as part of the recommendations after this meeting, that perhaps the, not necessarily the rules committee, but a committee be established to deal with in-house arrangements. And that could be one of those things looking to look at.
Mr. Tatas, other questions?
Thank you, Chair. Just with regard to the question on the Sergeant at Arms and the reduction of cost, perhaps just to say that when we do the cost projections for the next financial year, we identify all of those capital projects that are cost-bearing, and that is the principle on which budget is then provided based on the input from the line. So having said that, in this financial year, Chair, our capital project, one of the big spenders for this financial year, has been the upgrade of our CCTV cameras. That is both the hardware as well as the software, and the storage of that. Now, from next year onward, we don't have to do that capital project again. So it will be maintenance of the licensing and all of those kinds of aspects. So I just wanted to give the context there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Just in response to the question from member side, you almost gave me a heart attack. I'm thinking, what are we spending 3 million on advertising for? We really don't. I connected with the manager of finance, and those are the two once-off projects that reside in PEO. So it is in public engagement. One is the corporate video that we're almost done with, and the other one is the digital online platform. And it's a once-off expenditure; it won't recur into the future. So that is why the increase is there. Thanks.
Members, that's a wrap. No any other questions. I am going to allow the speaker.
Thank you, Chair.
Conclusion remarks?
Chair, before I get to the thank you for the engagement, there was a question in the beginning of the session by Honourable Syed, and I think it's important that I address that. Chair, I want to state on the record that the event or the lecture held yesterday in the venue of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament was in fact not arranged by the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. As you know, or as you saw, that even from the initial invitations, there was no link to the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. There was no branding provided at the event for Western Cape Provincial Parliament. There was also no resources utilized by the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, and no financial contribution or money spent by the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Chair, the invitation, as I understand it, was circulated to all members of health portfolio committees in both the Provincial Parliament, the National Assembly, and the National Council of Provinces, for them to voluntarily attend this lecture by this guest speaker. I think it's also important to note that the venue that was utilized as the auditorium was requested by the organizer of the event, because the organizer of the event is a member of the WCPP, and any other member can request the venue and follow the process to be afforded an opportunity or afforded the venue to be used for whichever purpose, if you follow the process. I think it's also important to, on the record, state that the views expressed by the guest speaker during this lecture is not the views necessarily, or that is not the views of the WCPP. Thank you, Chair. I think that's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Speaker, for the response. I think that it answers the question, and that's a wrap. And now you can go to the...
Thank you.
Okay. Go on, member.
Chair, thank you. I thank the speaker for the response and for the clarity that has been given. Obviously, it has conjured up some follow-ups, but it's fine. We don't want to derail the particular meeting. It's a budget focus, but perhaps we can just get a sense, because I'm not too sure then who, would it be correct for me to ask here, who is the member that has organized the event? Thank you. Because we don't, I mean, some of us were just bombarded with the media asking, we're hearing, seeing tweets, all those things. We just want to.
I think the speaker can respond.
Yeah, I mean, it's public knowledge that the event was arranged by member Schaefer in that capacity. So I think I don't know if there's any further questions, but if I can then go to the thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then the last.
All right. Firstly, Chair, thank you very much. It's the first one for me at POC. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to thank the members for the manner in which we could engage this vote, for the respectful manner. And I always say the oversight and accountability is something that I take very seriously, and I think today was once again an indication of that. So thank you very much to the committee and to you, Chair, for your leadership and for the manner in which we could engage. And then to the staff of WCPP, not necessarily just the management team that's represented here today, but every single staff member in this institution that makes it possible for this institution to exist and for the institution to perform its constitutional mandate and core mandates. Thank you very, very much. And then to the team here, thank you for your support and for the last couple of weeks to make sure that we could present a budget in the constraints of the financial difficulties that we face in the country, to put together the best possible budget to support the work of Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Member Philander, on behalf of us, any last word? On our behalf?
No.
Member Masako is chairing.
None last words, Chairperson. Just quite ready for the adoption of the report.
He's so perfect. Thank you very much. And to Speaker, Deputy Speaker, officials and the senior staff, we really appreciate the engagement. I think there is more that we still have to crawl before we can say we are going for the 100 meters race of the Olympics. But all these questions is just giving us the directions to move there and really make sure that we have an institution that we can always say we are proud of. And I think we are on the right track in doing that. And your contribution is always appreciated, much as we ask the question, but we also thank you for all that you are doing in supporting the members, and we salute you for always, as we come in a different ourselves, still being able to manage and assist us. We really thank you, and looking forward for the new financial year in making sure that we carry the mandate of this institution. With that being said, if you can excuse us to continue with the business of our committee. How do we support the report next?
Committee supports the vote, and then if there's any minority view, we put it in here, Chair. Michelle emailed us to Stephanie.
I'll be here.
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
No, that's perfect.
You're
Then I
here
can bring it to
tomorrow.
then I can bring it to you, then you can just sign it. But this is just now for the reading out, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much, members. There is the members. There is the minutes. And in the back of the pack, there are minutes that we have to adopt. Check on this agenda. At the back, there is the draft minutes that we have to adopt. Can I get the proposer? Bossman. Can I get the proposal? Member
Propose
Philander?
that we adopt, Chairperson.
Okay, seconder? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Member Bosman. The minutes duly adopted. Okay, members, as you know, the practice. So, on the committee report of Parliamentary Oversight Committee on Vote 2, Provincial Parliament in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill, B2 of 2023, dated the 16th of March 2023. The Parliamentary Oversight Committee report that it has concluded its deliberations on the Vote 2 of the Provincial Parliament in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill, B2 of 2023, referred to the committee in terms of Standing Rule 188, and that it supports the vote referred to it. Can I get the member Philander?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I wish to propose that we support.
Thank you very much. Member Lecker?
Thank you, Chair. The ANC wishes to express its minority.
Any support to the proposal of Member Philander? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Member Lecker. So that will be presented in the minority view in terms of Standing Rule 90. The African National Congress expressed its minority view that it does not support the vote. That will be in order. Can we support again with that amendment of the minority view?
Yes, Chairperson, perhaps just a question for clarity. Are one allowed to ask which parts of the vote or which programs of the votes are not supported, upon which the minority view is expressed?
Okay, that is in order. I'm sharing. I'm just a chair member. Sorry.
Chair, I think we'll wait for the debates in 2 weeks' time. Then in the debate, Member Lecker will express which parts.
That is noted. As for the committee report, they will be adopted in with the minority view as status. Thank you very much, honorable members, for the engagement. And Dustin, thank you very much, Lizette. And Masenta, you are all appreciated. The meeting is adjourned. Go home.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
There is the snacks that you can relax and have.